Hi guys! We are going to be factoring quadratics now, and the first thing we're going to talk about are just some different expressions, what we can call them. First we have a monomial. If you have a monomial, that just means that there is only one term, where a binomial has two terms, a trinomial has three terms, and then a polynomial is an expression with more than two algebraic terms, and these terms are going to be added or subtracted. So let's take a look at the first type of factoring that we're going to be doing today, and that's just finding a GCF. Example 1a, since it has two terms, we would call that a binomial. What we're going to do is we're going to look to see if there is something that the two terms have in common. So you want to look. They're both even, so we can divide those both by 2, and they both have at least one t. So what I'm going to do is divide both of these terms by 2t. And then 2t squared divided by 2t is going to leave me with 1t, minus 10t divided by 2t is 5. I put my GCF out front, and I'm done. Let's try another one. The next one, again, look at the two numbers, 14 and 35. See if you can figure out what you can divide both those by. We can divide both of those by 7, and then look to see the greatest number of p's that you could take from each of those. The first one has 5 p's, the second one has 3, so the most I can take from both of them is 3 p's. I'm going to put my GCF out front, and then the leftovers in the parentheses. 14 divided by 7 is 2. I had 5 p's, I'm dividing out 3. So P5 minus P3, because you subtract when you have your exponents like that, is P2. Or you can think there's 2 extra p's on top than there was at the bottom. Minus 35 divided by 7 is 5. And then I've got 3 p's on top, 3 p's at the bottom. Those are going to cancel out. So we're done. Let's take a look at the next one. We have 3 terms now. Remember, we call 3 terms a trinomial. And you're going to look at the 18, the 12, and the 24 and try to figure out what the GCF, what's the number that you can divide all of those by. Now, they're all even. You can divide them all by 2, but that wouldn't be the greatest common factor, and then you're going to have to do more work. So, 18, 12, and 24, you can divide all of those by 6. Take a look at the m's. All of the terms have m squared, so I can divide m squared. Look at the n's in all the terms. The first term has 4, the second one has 3 n's, and the last one only has 2. So the most number of n's that you can divide all 3 terms by is n squared. Sorry, that got a little squishy. Put your GCF out in front, 6m squared, n squared, and all the leftovers in the parentheses. 18 divided by 6 is 3. There were 2 m's on top, 2 at the bottom, so they actually just cancel out. There were 4 n's on top, 2 at the bottom, so there's 2 extra n's left over. 4 minus 2 is 2. Minus 12 divided by 6 is 2. The m's again cancel out. There were 3 n's on top, 1 at the bottom, so there's 1 left over. And then finally, plus, don't forget to put your plus or minus signs in between the terms. 24 divided by 6 is 4. Your variables all cancel out this time. So that's our answer right there. 6m squared n squared times 3n squared minus 2n plus 4. Alright, let's move on. Now we're going to try factor by grouping. Now this might be new to you. You may have not seen this before, so just kind of bear with me here. What we're going to do is we're going to group this. Sometimes you might want to actually break it into 2 totally different binomials here. We're going to look for the greatest common factor in the first, and we're going to look for the greatest common factor in the second group. So let's just start. The first group has a 2 and an 8, so I can divide both of those by 2. I'm going to not always write them underneath. So I'm going to put 2 out front. I can take 2 z's, z squared, from both of those terms. Now think, if you were going to do 2z cubed divided by 2z squared, you're left with just a z. Minus 8z squared divided by 2z squared. 8 divided by 2 is 4. The z's are gone. Then we have a plus sign. Look for the GCF in the second group. You actually can divide both of those by 3. Yeah, that moved. The GCFs do not have to be the same for the two groups. So I'm going to put the 3 out in front, and 3z divided by 3 is z. 12 divided by 3, there is a minus in between, is 4. I want you to take note of something here. Notice that the parentheses are the same. That has to happen. So maybe make a note. The parentheses have to be the same. If they're not, then either you messed up or it's not going to work by factoring by grouping. Alright, now what we're going to do is, since those parentheses are the same, that is actually going to be one of our final parenthesis answers, z minus 4. The other parenthesis is going to come from the GCF stuff, so the stuff that was out in front. So 2z squared plus 3. We just factored by grouping. I want to point something else out. What we just did is called unfoiling, or we just did the opposite of foiling. And I want to show you that if you were to FOIL this out, and I don't really want you to FOIL it, but if you were to FOIL it out, you're going to get the same problem that you started with. So if you look, 2z cubed times z is 2z, sorry, I said cubed. 2z squared times z is 2z cubed. Multiply the outsides, you get minus 8z squared. Multiply the insides, plus 3z. And then your last term's minus 12. If you look back up at the original problem, mine's not quite as neat, but that's exactly what you started with. So factoring by grouping is the opposite of foiling. Let's try another one. So we're going to look at our first 2 terms. So take a look at those first 2 terms and see if you can find the GCF. So again, we're just looking at these 2 terms right there. And then we're going to look at these 2 terms. The GCF in the first 2 terms is 9y squared. And I'm left with 5y minus 3. Now notice there's a minus sign in the middle. You're always going to have a minus sign if it's a minus sign. The GCF in the next 2 terms is 10. Remember what I said, the parentheses have to match up. So if you're doing this work and they don't match up, then go back and see if you made a mistake or maybe it's just not possible. So 50y divided by 10 is 5y. That's messy. And then be careful here because we're really doing 30 divided by negative 10. That's minus 3. And there's my parenthesis. We're good because the parentheses definitely do match up. And now we're just going to write our answer. 9y squared minus 10 is the stuff from out in front, the GCF stuff, and then my matching parentheses, 5y minus 3. Please don't write 5y minus 3 twice. It's because we undid foiling is why it looks like there's 2 5y minus 3's. Alright, let's try some more.